Hello and welcome. Hello to Health Careers Live. My name is Cat Davison, and my apologies for being late. I take part responsibility for that with the technical. I am a Dr. Cat Davison. I am a GP by training and background, but I'm also a wing commander in the Royal Air Force. I'm here to talk to you today about general practice in the austere and wild. I have done a presentation, so bear with me, we'll just flip across. I did a lot of flying and I didn't care for medicine. I never wanted to be a doctor. So I flew all I could and I went to the Air Force to try and be sponsored as a pilot. Unfortunately, I had no hand-eye coordination. And my dream of being a pilot was shattered age 18 when they said I'd had some of the worst aptitude scores they'd ever seen. So I then looked at what else I could do in the Royal Air Force. At that point in time, at 17, I had no idea that I wanted to be a doctor, but at the time I definitely wanted to join the Air Force. So I did my A-levels. Next slide, please. And I did my A-levels and they didn't go to plan. I managed to pass them, but not do so well in them. And partly it was because I was doing everything else. So what I will say to you, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I was driving to, I had got my A-level results. I was driving to Birmingham University to clearing and I crashed my mum's brown Nova. This was her prized possession and I crashed it. It was a write-off. So I had to get onto the train with the radio that you pulled out, got the radio, and I came back home and I had a sudden a thought of what am I doing? So I'd just not got the grades I wanted at A-level. The Air Force were offering me to come in as a navigator. So I looked, thought, what do I do? And I did a reassess and I retook my A-levels, a year of hard slog, and I was successful to get into med school. Next page, please. So I was lucky enough to get into Liverpool, and the Air Force very kindly sponsored me through as a doctor. So your first 2 years is a bursary, which they do offer, where you get your tuition fees paid. And then the next 3 years, I was paid as a pilot officer. So I was now coming into the Royal Air Force as a doctor. What type of doctor? Hadn't decided. But through university, I got to fly. I got to go on skiing trips. I got to do a whole variety of exposure to the Royal Air Force and while completing my studies at Liverpool. Next slide. So you finished medical school, and this is going back into 2004, and you did house jobs. Now, if you join the Royal Air Force and sponsored through, and you're going to become a doctor, you do your house jobs within the National Health Service. So I went to Birmingham, Queen Elizabeth, Selly Oak, and then down to the other site. I did my house jobs, and at that time it was 1 year. And on completing house jobs, I went to RAF College Cranwell. So this is where they train you to be an officer. So this is an opportunity for you to take a pause on medicine. And for 8 weeks, they trained us in everything from leadership, management, how to survive in the wilderness. We did a lot of weapon training, and marching and drill, everything to maintain the standards of the Royal Air Force. And after those 8 weeks, I then went to be a general duties medical time. So I went to an RAF station and I worked in the medical system. Next page. So what do you do in the Royal Air Force as a military JP training? Well, you do it in effect in a medical centre with patients, but you also do it with the NHS. So my GP training was half NHS, half military. You could say I got the best of both worlds. The training that we did, it qualified. I did MRCGP, but I did on the old system. So your qualifications work in the NHS and in the military. And it took 3 years, and in 2009, I qualified as a GP. Next slide. So what does life mean as a GP in the military? Now, I'm well aware that this conference is not just about doctors, it's about a wide of all allied health professionals, everyone. So for me as a GP, I worked in a med centre on a base in the UK. However, what I also did was I had some amazing opportunities. So I did jungle survival. That was 3 weeks learning to survive in the jungle. The picture in the middle is me on my made in my shelter. That's not a hammock, that is my survival shelter, made myself, and I slept out there on a night. The one down to the left is sleeping on the floor. So if you are going to survive and you don't have your hammock, this is how you live. Another part of survival I did was I looked after 30 people on what we call desert survival. So we're out in Nevada desert. They are learning how to survive with very little food, how to get water, how to survive off the local plants, animals, and I was there as their doctor. So down to the right, you can't see, but there's a lovely little snake under the stone there. And that was another role as a doctor, because wherever we operate, the military operates around the world, it has to have medical cover. And so whether we're sending nurses, paramedics, doctors, physios, we always send medical support. So there is a real wide range, and it's not just working in a medical centre. Next slide. So one of the things about being a GP in the military, and I will say military because I think the Royal Air Force, the Royal Navy and the Army are very similar. We do operate in the same space, is this could be your medical centre. So this was Belize. This was 2 months living in the jungle. I had a hammock. We were on wet and dry routine. So this main picture here is where you live under a canopy, and that's where you live and you will operate from, and that is your medical centre. We closed off an area for privacy. This particular trip, I was looking after, I think it was 150 soldiers operating in jungle. My timelines were slightly extended, so I think I had up to 2 hours to get down, 2 hours to get down to the hospital for role 2. So I was it. One of the things for you is soldiers are quite interesting. They all had a chicken for which they had to survive on. 3 of them, their chicken died. Now, normally you kill the chicken and then you eat it, but because their chicken had died, they decided they would still eat it. That created 3 quite severe DNV actually. So you're magically sitting there in the middle of nowhere with 3, trying to get on top of their fluid balance, trying to work out whether you're about to put them on the back of an ambulance, who would you send with that individual down, who would you do to make the 90 to 2 hour trip. It is absolutely managing risk, but it's not sitting in 4 walls. So that was several months of my life living in the jungle supporting. The bottom left is a medical centre in East Africa. That is a medical centre that they had, and I was there and I did some training and support. I didn't offer a clinic because it couldn't be maintained a clinic, but the opportunity there to go and give them some bit of training, a bit of understanding about the medication, because sometimes didn't understand the medication they had, and just offer advice and support to help them in the long term. That was another role of being a GP. Next slide, please. So what are the opportunities for all? So it's not just the doctors that get to go out. This here is in India. We did a trip out to support a rugby. It was called what we call defence engagement, where we go over and we do rugby training with the local schools. That was at the bottom left is the physio. So the physio, and he was more in demand than I was. He was teaching me. We did a lot of physio support. We even trained with the local rugby teams to offer some basic physio, bit of taping, bit of sports injuries. Very much what you do in the military is sports injuries, heat, and on everything we work onto the environment. Obviously, we don't see many geriatrics. There is a certain amount of gynecology, but the breadth is very much focused on sport and environmental, because your population generally is very young. So this was a tour where we had a physio. I have been on some where we've had nurses and paramedics. We do send paramedics out on their own to go and cover around the world. Independent practitioner, always got reach back, always got ability to get support. So the opportunities are not just there for doctors. Next page. So where else? What else have I got to do in the career? So it's been I've been around the world, incredibly lucky. I've worked. Bottom left was training in other parts of Africa. I've been thrown out of an aircraft, really as a thank you, but also to see what it's like to parachute with all your kit and enter into an area that you can't get at, so you parachute in. On the right hand side was I was fortunate enough to take 32 people up Kilimanjaro. I was the doctor that covered the expedition. A lot of the skills you learn in the military are directly linked to expedition medicine. So I took the people up Kilimanjaro. Well, luckily, I think we had 31 out of 32 summit. They were London Business School, so I did this as an addition, London Business School graduates, executive MBA, and opportunities there. And it's all about managing risk. I would argue what it does teach you in the military is how you nothing is impossible. You can do anything if you put your mind to it, but it's all about how you approach it. So I am very when I approach looking after people on the mountain, I'm very linear in how I operate. I do the same every day. My time management is good, and I literally kept an eye on everyone. And I used to get them up 10 minutes before they were required to, just to make sure we're on time to go. But it's a lot of it is head over, it's mind over matter. Some of them felt they couldn't do it, but you in the military, it does teach you that there is no limits on life. You can do anything, and actually you can push yourself out of the comfort zone and do really well. And actually, to get 31 out of 32, there was a couple I didn't think would make the final push, and they did. So what I'm trying to say is the skills you learn to operate and actually feel risk manage out on a mountain when you have your ability, your evacuation lines are extended, you are on your own, albeit you have telephone backup always. How you approach that and manage it, and you practice and train, actually helps you understand. Next one. Next slide. So my career then moved from delivering medical care as a GP. So at this point, I had been a senior medical officer, like a senior doctor. I'd run a practice. I'd been to Afghanistan. I'd been around the world, and then I did what we called a staff job. So if you can imagine, when the military are operating all around the world, they need to have the opportunity to be supported back in the UK. So I worked at the headquarters. This is an operational headquarters in Northwood. And this is where, when you're deployed anywhere in the world, we're a small medical team that makes sure everyone is okay. You get injured in the middle of nowhere, we will support your evacuation home. We will make sure that you have your primary health care, your pre-hospital care, your primary health care, your secondary care, and then back to UK. So one of the things I did was I ran the Africa desk. So I looked after everybody in Africa, and my job was to be, in effect, I was on call. We had a rota on call, but I looked after them every day. And I would make sure that whatever happened in that part of the world, we were on top of it and we could support. So if anything did happen, we could look after them. That could be everything from environmental health. I had environmental health support. It could be getting them to a new place, supporting them so that if they do a road move, they know where their nearest hospitals are. I would recce hospitals. I spent a lot of time in Nigeria. I went out to visit a lot of the local hospitals, meet the people, understand. So the job here in the military is not just being clinical facing. You come a point in your career when you offer support to operations, and your logistical and your ability to plan comes into play. Next slide. So I was fortunate then to be officer commanding tactical med wing. So this is a unit of about 160 people who do, I have to say, they do amazing things all around the world. They have, and we are there on call 24/7 to support people. Now, on the right, Operation Ouch did when I was there, they did an episode for children to show them about how we aeromedically evacuate. So one of the things we do, next slide please. One of the things we do is we bring people back in the back of aeroplanes. Critical care air assist team. So these are where we set up a intensive care in the back of an aircraft. Now this requires nurses, medics, you would have mental health nurses, consultant anaesthetists, trainee. We have the registrars undertake these roles. EM consultants, EM registrars can do moves depending on the severity of the casualty. This is us operating and moving a patient in the air. Now, the one thing I will say is that it's not as straightforward as moving on the ground. So there is a requirement that you have to consider what type of injury. Do they have potential air in the brain? So therefore, do we need to, instead of pressurizing to 8,000 feet, which could affect expansion of gases, do we need to bring them down to sea level to make sure we don't cause air expansion in closed boxes? So there's lots of things you've got to think of. This physiological impact of how you look and transfer a patient is really important. And we're all trained. Every medical staff is trained in some way in aviation medicine so you can operate in this environment in your role and feel comfortable. It is a team sport. I can tell you the nurses, they take the lead. Absolutely. They're the nurses, whether it's working on a helicopter, they will clinically lead as the doctor, but the ability to hold the team, look for the wider picture, the nurses very much take the lead. So it's a real team sport. Next slide. So one of them is we bring back with Ebola was to bring back the air isolator. So air transport isolator. So this is ability to transfer Ebola patients around the world. This is one of the things we were doing through the Ebola next from Sierra Leone, Sierra Leone. And this is the actual in action. This is the isolator in the back of an aircraft. Next picture. And this is them arriving back in UCL Medical School. We did a move back. It was in the press, and that's them coming back. Next slide. So the ability to operate around the world, we have people on short notice. And I think that's the one thing, if you're considering a career in the military, you may spend some of your life on notice to move. Now, if you are a secondary care consultant, or you're a nurse, or you're a medic, or you're a operational department practitioner, then you will be working in the National Health Service. However, you will have protected time. If you are on a rota to be for a facility to go out anywhere in the world, then you will be on that rota, but you will be allowed that time to do your training and then potentially deploy. All our deployment training. And back to my point about Kilimanjaro, is that operating outside four walls, just as a teamwork works in the operating theatre, in the emergency department, teamwork works in the air, or it works in the middle of nowhere, in the jungle, or it works in Afghanistan in Helmand. And I think that the key bit here is that we all work together. And so there is no, yes, clinically, consultant takes the lead, but there is real sense of you are one team and all together. And I think the bit about the tactical medical and the command, what I will say, which was amazing, was the people. So we deployed to Hurricane Irma at 12 hours notice. We got a medical team of 13 people, packed the bags on that flight, and we got them out the door at 8 a.m. on that Friday morning. So I helped. What did I do? I helped pack, oversaw. I dealt with the link in to all the other, because obviously people are desperate to get you out there and they want to know what's going on. And so there's a huge amount of information. You have to think about your team, about their comms, their food, their sleeping. They're going out at 12 hours notice to a hurricane. And so the ability to survive in that, there's a full wrap. You can't just think of your patient. Yes, your patient, absolutely, but you have to survive. So it's your personal kit, it's your group kit, it's everything. And I think the key bit here is to think laterally. You don't just think of yourself, you think of second and third order effects. And that obviously is slightly different potentially to working in a static environment where you come to work and you all know what would be there. Everyone has it in it to adapt. Everyone can do it. And for some, it's incredibly exciting. For others, it's incredibly daunting. I mean, I don't deny there are nerves when you fly out to Afghanistan with all your kit, not knowing what you're going to be seeing and doing. However, equally, you grow, you're out of your comfort zone, but your comfort zone extends. And it's brilliant. And these moves, this is what it's all about: saving lives, bringing people back and getting them home to their loved ones. Next slide. So I commanded TAP Medwing, and then my next fantastic 9 months was with the United Nations. I was out in South Sudan on a mission, United Nations mission in South Sudan. So my role was Deputy Force Medical Officer, and now I was not offering GP, I was not doing GP support. What I was doing was I was running the medical centres for the United Nations around the country. So this on the left is me on, this was Dr. Cat on the radio. I was doing some very low level health prevention work, very low level, very simple, but just getting on the radio. It was the South Sudanese medical students were leading it, and I was just supporting them, offering them a bit of top cover, giving them a bit of advice, and that went all around South Sudan. Very simple things, because you can't change, you're not going to change. We come from a different culture, and you have to absolutely be aware of that culture. Equally, the United Nations. I mean, on my team, I was a Chinese, Sri Lankan, me as a Brit, and I've forgotten the other one. Oh, Rwandan. So we were a multinational team working together in the medical office, looking after all the medical centres. And when I say looking after, that could be everything from visits, so a bit like CQC visit, on a very different level. It could be when they have a casualty up in the deepest, darkest northeast, supporting liaising with the operational centre and the flight centre to move that casualty down to a role 2. Numerous jobs, but probably one of the best 9 months of my life. And if anybody wants to get involved with the UN, please feel free to contact me, because it is a fantastic organisation. Everyone thinks it's very difficult to get in, but the skills are there. You learn an awful lot. Yes, you spend time abroad. Yes, you spend time away. Yes, you don't have your potential creature comforts. Yes, I lived in an ISO container. I had to shower with my mouth closed. And yes, I had to do there's incredible stories, but it was the best 9 months, because just the sheer camaraderie of the people. You learn so much from others. We have a tendency to think sometimes that we know best in where we are and what we do, but we don't always know best. And I think to actually have that diversity is brilliant, and actually makes for a better clinician, leader, manager, all-round person. Next slide. Hello, next slide. I think I've lost you. Hello, I can hear you. Did I? Okay, I mean, I will continue then. I think the easiest thing is to continue. So, what I will say to anybody that is interested in a career in the military is it is a lifestyle. It is. Do you want to flick back to me? Do you want to leave the presentation? Flick back to me. Hi. So what I will say is that, if any apologies there for the presentation cutting out. I was almost at the end anyway. What I will say is that if you are considering a career in the military, it is probably one of the best things I ever did. But equally, I gave up a lot. I've probably missed 3 Christmases being deployed. I have missed numerous birthdays. I work very hard. I spend a lot of time away, and sometimes that's quite difficult. Geographically, I have had some choice over where I've wanted to be, but if you want to have some interesting jobs and variety, you have to move to the job. For some, they'd like just to stay in a medical centre. They like just to work on a station. They enjoy the interaction with the cross section of the population, because if you're on a station, you are looking after air crew, band, you could be looking after soldiers, the regiment, and everyone comes with their different medical issues. You've got a real cross section. But for others like me, I want to do something different, so I move. If you're thinking of another career, there are plenty available. We're recruiting dentists, physios, nurses. The Royal Air Force career website can well, if you look at the Royal Air Force RAF careers, you'll see available what's available, and a lot of them are from medics, dentists, nurses, doctors. Feel free to give the a call to see what we're recruiting, because we have everything from surgeons, anaesthetists, GPs. There is a cross section of specialities. So we also have space medicine. So some of my colleagues have done aviation and space medicine, which is a fantastic evolving. The UK space is moving forward, so you can be at the forefront of that. Anyway, I will leave it there, but I don't know if there's any questions or if anyone's been watching. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much then. I'll leave it there.